The Tamron 35 to 150 is the best lens on the market. It is the most versatile lens ever made, in my opinion. So in today's episode of Not Obsolete, we're going to be talking about the Tamron 35 to 150 and why I believe this is still the best lens in 2025. Although I have to play devil's advocate because there's the Sony 50 to 150, and there's also the newly rumored Samyang teaming up again with Schneider Kreuznach to have a 28 to 135 2.8 on the horizon. So let's break that down in today's episode of Not Obsolete. I've used the 70 to 200 f4 macro for a couple years now, since it released, so got it brand new. I purchased this because I'm a sports videographer and photographer. I'm also a basketball coach, and so I'm out in the sports world a lot. And I needed something that was light and portable that allowed me to go, be on the go and things like that and get a full range. But a couple things started happening when I started doing more paid gigs. When I started doing like one-on-one highlights and stuff like that, following specific players, specifically within the AAU environment, or like in dark gyms and things like that, or even in cross country. There's a point earlier this year where I was shooting on a really nice course that had kind of like this corridor of vegetation and things like that, where the light was kind of coming through. With f4, I couldn't get the shot that I wanted. I was limited by the lighting. And so even though I still love this, I still use this all the time, every day, for the most part, like in my studio with macro shots and stuff like that for product videography. This one had to come in and kind of save the day because I needed that extra stop of light sometimes. And here's the thing, here's the reality. Most clients don't really know the difference, specifically within the space that I'm in basketball. A lot of folks are doing stuff with their phones, iPads, and stuff like that. So whatever I show up with is going to be better quality than that. But where this one came in, the versatility of the f2.0 at the wide angle, whereas this one I was not able to do that, allows me to get closer, like on the baseline shots and things like that, because I'm at 35 versus 70, where sometimes 70 in the basketball gym, not sometimes, a lot of time, is too close to be on the baseline. You kind of at that 45-degree angles where you're getting that under the basket type shot. You're not able to do that with something like this, but with this one, I'm able to do that. And I'm getting those extra stops of light. Now, don't get me wrong, like I had to learn how to shoot with this particular lens. That's something that doesn't get talked about when talking about these comparisons. At f4, you just keep that one open. You move the shutter speed and stuff like that to kind of compensate for what you need to do. Whereas this one, you have that now extra stop and a half of light. I gotta worry about being overexposed, where I didn't have to worry about that, before in the gym. So there's trade-offs, but this one super flexible when it comes, and versatile when it comes to where I can take shots at now around that court, baseline, sideline, coach's box, different stuff like that. Whereas with the 70 to 200, you kind of got to be further back to use that particular lens. And I'm not actually losing range with this one, even though it stops at 150, because I can use the Super 35 mode in my A7C II and other cameras like it to get that extra range. So that 150 kind of becomes a 225, somewhere around there on the long end, while still keeping that 35, on this wide end right here. Playing devil's advocate, the competition is catching up. I mean, in the last year and a half, we're starting to see a lot of really nice ranges when it comes to super telephoto type lenses. You have the Sony 70 to 200 f2.8 G Master 2 lens, which is, it's like the holy grail. That's like the holy grail within this particular space. It does cost more. It's a little bit bigger. You now have the Sony 50 to 150, which may be the best lens technically on the market. 50 to 150 constant 2.0 aperture, but that thing is massive. It's larger, it weighs more, and it's almost 3 times the cost, right? 3 times the cost. And then you have the Sigma 70-200 2.8, which is probably the heaviest lens next to the Sony 50-150, but it's around the same price as this lens, and it goes on sale pretty often. And there is the Samyang Rokinon 35-150, but it didn't pan out. It doesn't seem like. There's a lot of, like, I watched a ton of reviews on that one, and compared to the Tamron, it just doesn't hold up. So even though that one's more affordable than the Tamron, a lot of people are still just Tamron 35-150. The dark horse on this one right now is the only reason you would have any pause, in my opinion, is the rumored Samyang partnering with Schneider Kreuznach for a 28-135 f2.8. So that gives you a stop less of light, but it gives you, 7 degrees more range field of view for wide angle lenses, for wide angle. That changes the type of emotion that you can pull, with shots. So the range is not just about how close and how far you stand. It's also the emotion that comes along with the shot. And so that one could be the dark horse. But the thing about that one, and in my opinion, that would actually be the true competitor here, because this one goes from f2.0 to f2.8 fairly quick in its range. So you're not missing out on a lot of range, with the f2.0. But we don't know when that lens is going to come out. We don't know, I guess we don't know if it's going to come out, because right now, Andres posted that on his video the other day at IBC, the picture of it. We just don't know how far along that is. It could fall apart in development. We just don't know. There hasn't been anything about it. So that is the dark horse. And so I'll talk about in a second whether or not you should pull, if you should go ahead and purchase now or you should wait. So from a user standpoint, the pros, this is the most versatile lens on the market, bar none, full stop. 35-150, affordability, size, weight, all of those different things. It is the most versatile lens on the market for what you get. And then again, Super 35 mode and things like that gives it extra features or extra range, right, that you can get. Cons, it's not light. This is heavier than this F4 70-200. It's heavier. And when you extend it and then, you take that into account at an all-day event like a wedding or something like that, that definitely adds up over time. When you think about this being a third-party lens with a Sony body, you don't get all the burst modes, as far as how many shots you can take. You don't get all of the stabilization that the 50-150 is able to give you, again, and you don't get like the lens correction and stuff like that. There are ways around all of those particular things, but they are all realities that you have to consider when making your decision on which one to buy. So the biggest question here, should you buy the Tamron 35-150 in 2025? To me, the answer is yes. If you are a hybrid shooter, an event shooter, or even a travel, photographer, videographer, and you need something that is versatile, you should definitely consider this lens as a top 1 or 2 in your category. And that's because it replaces 3 lenses. Like, there's the whole, trifecta, 24-70, 70 to, and 14-24, blah, blah, blah. It replaces at least 2 of those lenses in that trifecta. That makes it definitely worth being considered as your top priority. The second one would be the Sony 50-150, but that one's 3 times the cost. And so the time that I would consider buying that one is if you need the best of the best, lens correction, the best stabilization. You're getting, high amounts for your fees and stuff like that. But the Tamron or the Sony F50-150 f2.0, they're both going to give you professional looking shots. It's just whether or not the versatility is more important, the price is more important, etc. Technically, the Sony is the better lens. But to me, for the average person, the majority of professionals, the Tamron is the best lens to purchase. Not the better, but the best lens to purchase. So that kind of wraps it up for today's episode of Not Obsolete. I want to hear from you, like based on your thoughts, based on where you are as a photographer, videographer. Would you pay 3 times the amount for the Sony 50-150? It is the best lens, but is it the better lens for your kit and kind of what you need? Whereas the Tamron, I definitely believe for the average person, like I just said a second ago, it's going to be the best lens for everyone. So if you enjoyed today's breakdown, if you enjoyed these Not Obsolete series videos where I'm going to be talking about about kind of older tech, older gear, and whether or not it still stacks up in 2025, go watch the first episode. I'll put that one there. Let me know your thoughts. Consider joining the Cosey Coalition and subscribing and coming back and hanging out with us. But as always, stay cozy in that crazy world, and I'll see you in the next video. Peace.